Nicole the Mighty. How come you get a title? I don't have a title.
Hello! Welcome to the Dripping Springs Toastmasters Pandemic Edition. We are joining you today in social isolation. I have Stephen J. Seifert on one end and Nicole the Mighty on the other end, and we are gonna have some fun. Jay, welcome to the room.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here. How come I don't get a name like Nicole the Mighty?
You can rename yourself.
Well, okay, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
go hover over your name, click on participants.
Oh, no, never
Hover
mind.
over your name and click more and change it. I want to see what your name's going to be.
Participants?
Yep, participants down at the bottom, manage participants.
Yeah, wait, yeah, we're at participants, manage participants?
Yep.
Oh, under Jamie, can I change that?
So it says J, so click on more. If you hover over it, click on more.
Yeah.
And rename.
Rename?
Uh-huh. Give yourself a new name. I feel like we should have some theme music or something. Hold on, let me see what I can do. It's probably totally illegal. This is already off to an exciting start.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're gonna figure this out as we go, which is what we're doing basically with this whole Corona thing.
It's so true.
Because there aren't rules. Nobody wrote rules for this. There was an old joke about life, and it was that life, this is just a rehearsal. If this were the real thing, you would have been given better instructions.
Oh,
so here we are. I mean, that's our deal.
If only that were true. All right, so what we're doing here, Jay, thank you so much for being my first guest on the show. This is the Dripping Springs Toastmasters Pandemic Edition, and we are gonna come together in these virtual groups to do some interviews and play some games and have some fun and put it out there for the rest of our people to see so we can stay connected during these strange times and hopefully learn about ourselves, learn about each other, and learn some resilience strategies to get through this, right?
Yes.
So the first thing I want to know about you, Jay, is how was your birth? What was it like being born? When did this happen?
It was very confusing. It was way back when the Earth was still cooling in 1946. And my mother always reminded me that she was in labor for 72 months or something like that. And I hated it when she would remember that, because when I was standing next to her, she'd always tell me about how difficult her labor was, and then she'd punch me real hard in the shoulder, and it always hurt. But anyway, so despite the fact that she was in labor forever and ever and ever and ever, I was very premature. 20 weeks, I think, under 2 pounds. So a miracle birth in 1946.
Wow.
And the reason was that she smoked a lot all the way during pregnancy, because back then nobody knew that you weren't supposed to do that. And so and not only did she smoke, the doctor was smoking. I mean, everybody in the delivery room was smoking. They were trying to get me out, and they're using chains and come-alongs and a forklift and stuff like that. And so finally, I think it was the axle grease that finally did it. But so, at any rate, so they finally get me out, and the first thing I remember is going, "Mom, is that you?" So I had coronavirus symptoms. Anyway, and so that explains why I have really see that skinny little wrist, tiny little skinny wrist.
That is tiny.
And yeah, so nobody knew that you weren't supposed to smoke when you were pregnant. So I was always a little guy, and then me and Mike Wilson were always the shortest kids in class, and I hated it when we would line up by height, because he and I were always way at the end.
Oh.
And so I decided that would never do. And so around 8th grade, I was reading a Boys Life magazine, and I saw a Charles Atlas ad where it showed the little skinny guy getting sand kicked at him on the beach, and the big muscle guy goes off with a good-looking girl. So that's when I bought my first barbell. I still have it.
Do you use it?
A York 110-pound barbell. I still have it. Yes.
And it's in use? Because it doesn't look like you've been using it, Jay. Your wrists are pretty skinny.
Well, I can't do anything about that. But at the swim party, you didn't notice my traps, my pecs, my
I
lats,
noticed.
huh?
I think you should take your shirt off now and show us your stuff.
Later.
Well, thank you for that. So I would also like to know, when did you become obsessed with sex, and why does sex always come up every time you open your mouth?
Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's great though. We love it.
Well, here again, I mean, there's so many things that happen in your life that you really don't have any control over. And I guess when I was I don't know how much of this we're supposed to get into, but I think the other reason that I didn't thrive and grow as a baby is that back then the only people who breastfed were hippies, and they weren't even, they were gypsies, and people who lived on farms and stuff. And I don't know if it was a Dr. Spock thing, but it was very much out of vogue. And it took until the sexual revolution, there we go again, of the 60s, which was more in the 70s, that things people started paying attention to what was going on, and started making better decisions. But anyway, my mother had a friend who would lean over and pick me up. And she always wore these really low-cut blouses. And she had bodacious tatas, and I had never even seen a tata. And so once I was introduced to them, I decided that I really, really liked those, and decided to spend the rest of my life finding out as much as I could about those and everything anyway. And I told part of my story the other night at Toastmasters about just the experiences that I've had, and how things that can happen just sort of, and we've all had those experiences where we especially when we're young, where we have an experience and it makes such an impact on us that it really informs the way we look at things for the whole rest of our lives. So I don't know, I guess maybe if there's a reason, that's it.
That's fascinating.
Thank you.
You didn't know that you brought up sex every time you opened your mouth?
I knew it was every other time. I didn't know it was every time.
I don't know about our viewers, but I, for one, enjoy the drinking game that I play on the fly with my friends. All right, whenever Jay says something about sex, take a drink. So very often I have brought a coffee travel mug to Toastmasters filled with a little bit of bourbon.
Oh.
And I like to have little sips of it every time you say something slightly inappropriate.
Well, now, but is it really inappropriate? And I don't. So let's talk about that, because what are the community standards nowadays?
Look at this.
Oh, that's highly appropriate.
I'm going to add this to my coffee, and we're just going to keep track of every time you say something.
Could I have some?
With sex.
Yes,
Yes, here. Yes, here.
Oh, limp. Oh.
There you go. Cheers.
Oh God, much better. Thank you.
That's good.
So, tell me what direction you want to go off into, and we will do it.
Yeah, let's do what we want to do. But what I think is interesting is you said, is it inappropriate? And you know what? It's not inappropriate, but my generation, the sex education that we received was abstinence only, don't have sex, don't talk about sex, masturbation is bad, looking at your body, thinking about your body, and thinking about other people's bodies is bad and sinful, don't do it. So I do hear myself say these things like, ooh, that's inappropriate, though I don't think that I really believe that. But there's this generational difference where Gen Xers, millennials, have this shame around sex and this taboo around sex that is very different from our parents' generation.
Well, except what you all need to understand about us boomers is that we were coming of age to start with in the 50s, which was the Eisenhower era, very buttoned down, very conservative. The world was a wonderful place if you happened to be a white, Anglo-Saxon, heterosexual, Protestant, everything was perfect. If you were not any of those things, it wasn't such a great place to be in. But talk about repressed, oh my gosh. And the other day when I talked about how shocked I was when that man used the word pregnant, and because back then you didn't say that word. In fact, as late as in my college years, I remember a friend of mine who's actually a pretty well-known author now, Richard North Patterson is his name. And there were a few of us standing around, and he said, womb, W-O-M-B, womb. And the guy, one of the guys that was with us, was there with his girlfriend, and he was startled, and he grabbed Rick and moved off to the side. And I remember him saying, he used to say, hey chief, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't use language like that when Pam is around. I kid you not, I'm not making this up. So you talk about generational things. I have two 35-year-old daughters, they're millennials. And I have talked to them about this, and you and I have had conversations about this, because there is a much more generous use of the F word now. And my daughter Alex, who writes for the Texas Medical Center, and I've asked her, when you guys are sitting around the office, do you use that all the time? She goes, oh, hell yeah. And it's what we do. It's how we communicate. It's part of the language. And I'll tell you a story that is absolutely a true story. And it was my senior year in college. This is Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. So we're in flyover country, the Midwest. We heard about stuff that was going on the East Coast and the West Coast, but it hadn't gotten to the middle of the country by any means. And there were people that were breaking taboos, like Lenny Bruce, the comedian, Red Fox, the comedian, and they were getting busted and arrested and all that stuff because they were using language that you were not supposed to use. So this is a true story. And I am going to violate my own rule, and I'm going to actually say out loud the F word in order to tell you the story. I know. Okay, here we go.
No, I'm so excited right now.
So it was spring semester senior year, I think it was in 68. I was working at a place called the College Inn, and it was a little bar behind a bigger bar down an alley in Oxford, Ohio, all college kids. By the way, the only alcoholic beverage you could drink was 3.2 beer, low beer. You had to drink kegs and kegs to get, so what happened was before you got a buzz, you usually threw up.
Yeah.
So anyway, there were bands on Saturday afternoon. These were local bands like from Dayton or Cincinnati or wherever that would come in and they'd play a gig. And there was this one band that was sort of a regular band. And the lead man, I saw himself as kind of an entertainer, comedian, stuff like that. So between numbers, he wants to tell this joke. And he says, there's a panhandler out on the street, and he's got a cup, and he's asking for spare change. And this gentleman walks by, and the panhandler says, buddy, can you spare me a quarter? And this guy is kind of a dandy, and he looks down at him, and he says, neither a borrower nor a lender be, Shakespeare. The bum looks at him and says, fuck you, Tennessee Williams. In the time that the mic got unplugged, the amps got unplugged, it took a millisecond for the manager to shut that thing down, kick those guys off the stage, and tell them never darken our door again.
Wow.
That's what happened. And this is 1968 in Oxford, Ohio.
That is crazy.
But it gives you a good sense of why it's so difficult for people that are my age cohorts to understand completely what's going on. Yeah, I was thinking about Bob Dylan the other day. he says, the times they are changing, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. And he was speaking to my parents back then, back in the 60s. And we were the ones that were all for all of this radical change. And there's a really good reason why we were so enthusiastic about it. And that's because our mantra was, if it feels good, do it.
Yeah.
That's it. No harm, no foul. And they're really about the only thing you could do to screw up back then was get a girl pregnant. I mean, other than that, what were the taboos? What were the, I mean, so, and by the way, back then, do you know how most teenage boys proposed back then?
No.
You're what? You're what? True.
Do you know
Anyway.
this from experience?
No, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. No, I mean, not that I know of.
All right. I want to play a little game of Would You Rather.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Would you rather, let's see. Blow a 30-point lead in a basketball game, but still find yourself 2 points up with 1 minute to play, or come back from being down 30, but still be down 2 with 1 minute to play. Would you rather blow a 30-point lead in a basketball game, but still find yourself 2 points up with 1 minute to play, or come back from being down 30, but still be down 2 with 1 minute to play?
No, I vote for the first one because the comeback's more recent, and that's going to give us, our team, the belief that we can actually go ahead and win this thing. Okay, we thought we were getting slaughtered. We came back and we're within reach. We're going to win this sucker.
So you would rather come back from being down 30?
Yeah.
Awesome. I like that. So how does that show up in your life?
Well, what I guess I try to do is look as objectively as possible at what's going on. And your internet connection is unstable. I guess that's better than them telling us that we're unstable.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, and it's that whole Henry Ford thing about self-belief. And he said way back, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. I mean, to kind of paraphrase. And in the years that we've been working with people trying to get them to embrace better individual behavior to improve the health status of whatever the collective is they're part of, the thing we know is that that's literally the most essential part of the process, is that self-belief. So we talk about things like achieve and believe. And if you can go out and achieve even the smallest thing, what it does is it says, hey, I can do this. And then you build on that self-belief. That's the foundation. And it's a stepping stone. And you go to the next thing and the next thing. And what's really preposterous is that for all these decades, companies have been going to their employees and saying, you guys are costing us too much money. We got to do something about this. So here's what we're going to do. We brought in a personal trainer and we brought in a dietitian and we want you to do this, this, this. Well, but they don't understand that that's asking one hell of a lot. Yeah. To say to somebody, I want you to engage in a behavior that has never been part of your personal repertoire. But all of a sudden now, I expect you, even though you're dead tired after you work 8 hours a day at a job you hate and you got an hour and a half commute and you finally get home and the kids are screaming and you're supposed to get out and have a calm walk around the block. No, you're going to go to the wine thing and pour yourself a glass and sit on the sofa and watch TMZ. So if we're not realistic about the expectations that we create, we're going to frustrate ourselves. And in fact, you're going to doom the effort from the very beginning because you have literally talked yourself out of believing that it's possible. So I think that's hugely important. And today, what I think we all have to do is give ourselves the opportunity to have some small successes. And maybe the fact that we're all in the situation we're in, where we're sequestered and we're at home, and you say, okay, that's horrible, it's terrible. Well, is it really? Is there maybe a chance here for us to kind of say, hey, look, I've been given a gift. I don't have to do the commute. I still have to get my work done, but here's a chance for me and my kids maybe to develop some skills that we wouldn't have done ordinarily. Or what I fear is that Melinda was telling me that there is no such thing as a bag of chips in the grocery store. Well, of course, there's not much of anything in the grocery store, but so people are going to be sitting around eating junk and binge watching junk, and that's not good. But others maybe will say, hey, here's an opportunity for me to do something that will give me that, again, that self-belief. And that's also one of the absolute best ways we can deal with stress. And we are more stressed now than we ever have been, societally or in any other way. It's getting worse instead of better. And it is going to take some maybe many groups of people, like what we're doing right now, to begin to put out a message that says, hey, let's kind of take a step back, maybe reorder some things and say, is there embedded in this, what's the thing about danger, crisis? And people said this for years and years, but it turns out not to be true, that in Cantonese or whatever, the symbol for crisis includes both danger and opportunity, and it's not quite like that. But so yeah, there's danger, there's risk, absolutely. But what if we then take another look and say, okay, but what are the opportunities here that may or may not be that obvious to us, and maybe this is our chance to do something about it.
Yeah. That really, I mean, I feel like you kind of answered it, but my question is, how do you think coronavirus is going to change us? This whole experience, how do you think this will change America? How do you think this will change our community? How will it change our club? How will it change us as individuals? Whatever direction you want to take that, how do you think this will change us?
Well, let's take our club. As you know, I expressed the opinion that I wasn't sure that our virtual meeting would work, because so much of what we gain in our actual meetings is the face-to-face real-time interaction and all that other stuff, and and I was wrong. I was completely wrong. And a little while ago I said it's kind of like when you lose one of your senses, you suddenly go blind. Then all of your other senses perk up, and they're more acute, and they help you compensate for the fact that you've lost that one sense. So what did we lose by not being real together? We lost the actual, we hug each other when we come in, and you like to do booty bumps with everybody. And in fact, we have to ask you to stop because you won't stop. You keep doing it. And but what happened during the meeting the other night was really pretty cool. And it was fun watching all of the 15, 16 different faces on the screen and watching their reaction. And it's going to be interesting this week again to see. So you have to, as a speaker, you're going to have to make some adjustments, because you're not going to be able to run around the room and gesture grandly and stuff like that. But it forces, I think I know I was paying closer attention to what Marvin was saying in his speech, and what you were saying, and what Jesse was saying as, general evaluator, stuff like that. So I think it's like everything else. Who is it? John Milton said, the mind is its own place. It can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. So I think that's where we're at. It's really going to be up to us. And so I think it's going to depend a lot on the individual, the group. And we are fortunate because we are all drawn together by shared values. We are a very tight-knit, homogeneous, we all love each other group, and we're going to do everything we can to see that everyone in our group succeeds. And that gives us, and churches will have the same experience when they're doing remote. It will not be the same for them because they're not in person, but they will still derive what they need to get out of the experience. So there again, it's going to be whatever you put into us, what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, and I love that idea that when one sense is taken away, the others are heightened. And I think that really does set us up for, okay, if we can't be in the same room with each other and feed off each other's energy in that way, how do we still connect with that energy virtually over the phone, even in our thoughts and our mind, like mentally, right?
Yeah.
For me, like energy is such a big thing. And I love being in a room full of people and feeling all the energy. So for me, it's really being able to like tune into that energy, even without having that person in my physical presence. And that is kind of a fun, different experience. I think for me too, it's understanding like the interconnectedness that we have. And I hope that people will start to realize how truly connected we are, not just in our energy and our ability to tap into each other, but in our need for one another, our need for each other to behave and show up and respond in certain ways. Even with the planet, right? Like all of the resources that we've been using with our planet and not paying attention or not caring how it's affecting our earth with, excess trash or using all the gas and oil and pumping the stuff into the air. And now that we're having to really shut all of that down, we're starting to see, oh, wow, like the air pollution's clearing up in some of these cities and the dolphins are coming back in Sardinia.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's understanding this interconnectedness. And I'm hopeful that we will start to respect and appreciate each other in different ways and stop being so selfish and me focused in our day-to-day life.
It's a great hope, and it's so easy to go, oh, well, it's like after 9/11, everybody was USA flags all over the place. We're all in this together. And it's true. It's funny. I think several weeks ago, there was at one of our meetings, there were two speeches and both speakers said the same thing about effectively the fact that the greatest unifying force is an external threat. And so all of a sudden our country faced this external threat like nothing we'd ever seen before because we weren't around for Pearl Harbor. And so we all did come together and it was a fantastic time. And it was talk about a scary time. One of my daughters I could tell I said, Al, what's the matter? And she said, I don't want to die. And I went, oh my God, I couldn't. She was in whatever grade she was in. And so this was a real deal. And so what we've done here is we've gone from the abstraction of there are things out there that can actually hurt us to the reality that, oh my gosh, if I am at risk because I have allowed my immune system to be compromised, if I have preventable chronic illnesses that make me more at risk, et cetera, then this could be a very real deal. And I think the good news here is that what you were just saying, I don't know if you heard about this in Canada, there's a movement that's called caremongering. Have you heard about that?
No.
Basically, that's it. It's us going out and saying, okay, who in my community, who in my sphere can I help? Who does need help? And being more conscious of the fact. It's interesting, the whole thing that's gone on with the millennials still going to the beach and having a blast, and I'm not that I ever discuss such things, but they're having way too much sex, and not thinking about they're not not supposed to be doing that, and they're going to go home and visit mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and give them a big hug, and then that's
right.
it, and the grandma and grandpa, which I've actually heard people say that perhaps this is actually only survival of the fittest. This is Darwinism at work. And so if you're fit and healthy, you're going to survive. And so we're getting rid of all those pesky old people. They're just taking up space anyway. And the millennials are saying, we got to get them out of the workforce. I can't get a promotion because the old guy's still hanging around. So this is probably a Chinese millennial plot.
You're like a coronavirus truther. You're one of those. Oh my God. All-knowing, omnipotent God. I just saw your name change. Damn it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll tell you, one of the things that just totally aggravates me about being a grandparent is I've got 2 granddaughters in Houston and 2 grandsons in San Jose. And the granddaughters, they were trying to figure out a name for me. And unfortunately, all-knowing, omnipotent Godhead is too many syllables for the little types. So they came up with Pop Pop, which I was sure was going to immediately become Poop Poop. So anyway.
It is now, Jay. It is now.
God, I hope they don't see this. So yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being my first guest. This was super fun. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, and when I stop recording, we'll probably talk a little bit longer.
I hope not. And after this may be your first and only.
Hey, it was worth it.
The FCC may decide that you cannot do this anymore.
Oh my God, the FCC is gonna love this shit.
Well, Madam President, I believe you're onto something. You have our wholehearted support. And may I say, in the most gratuitous way possible, that the reason that our meeting worked the other night is because of your mental illness. I mean leadership, your ability to. So anyway, thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for being a part of our club. Thanks for being my friend. I love you, love you, love you. Have a great self-sequester.
Okay. Thank you.